Okay, good night, everybody. Let me ask a question. Did anybody hear me talking?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, y'all heard me say all that?
Yep.
Okay.
No, you were muted a while ago. Now we can hear you.
Oh, so you didn't hear none of that intro I just made, huh?
Nah, nothing.
All right. This tech, this is the problem when you be on the two computers. You think one you're talking on, one you're not. Good night, everybody. Welcome to Fatherhood Talks, another episode of Fatherhood Talks for dads, by dads, to help dads. We have our team here tonight. Tonight's topic is dating our daughters, really looking and focusing on, in a big part to me, how to really develop that healthy relationship. And what does that look like? But it also can mean some other things that I'm sure we're going to get into. We're going to get into it on both ends. And I just say it because, I'm a father of one daughter. And so I would look at it, I'll look at it like that. But hey, let me welcome the rest of the panel and they can share themselves, say who they are, tell you about their kids, and then we'll get started.
Gene Robert Menard, have two kids, one son, one daughter.
Hey, good evening. My name is Lionel Lightborn. I'm a father to a tribe of seven adult. I won't even call it children. That's like an oxymoron. 7 adults. So always a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Donald Jones, divorced and father of 2, 1 daughter, 1 son.
Anybody else in the room? I mean, I know we have people in the room. I don't know if y'all here or y'all, I know we got Brother Lawrence here and he can't talk because he just had some surgery today. We want to send our blessings out to him. But he is here with us in the room, so you can see his beautiful picture if you're inside.
I guess everybody's recouping from their day off yesterday.
Yeah. Well, you know, not only the day off, but listen, man, it seems like every day we have to get more vigilant about keeping our head on the swivel. I mean, I sit here in front of this TV and just watch that people taking advantage of families trying to enjoy outside and those kind of things. And just so much, but then at the same time, there was a lot of beautiful things happening yesterday. And I know that fathers we're here to protect and keep our kids safe. I'm sure the other guys come in, they might be just missing it up. But let's just jump into this thing here about this idea of what it means to, date your daughter. Because we know the old saying about, daddy's girl, and how daddy, treat his daughter like a princess. And moms and sons got, this connection. Fathers have a certain connection with their daughters. But I think it's important, probably more than anything, is that we see that if women, we consider in our community women to be the stalwart of what we have to have someone to pour into them so they can believe in who they are. Especially when we talk about this idea of if a mother and a woman is the backbone to the family. Many women that I know, and I'll be very clear, some of the stronger women I know who I'm really close with, they have a very particular relationship with their fathers. And they could take me, and I think almost they could take me, and I could take them. And it's not, and I'm really close with them on a friend level, because I think they understand what it means to be a woman and to understand, at some point, I think almost how to better understand a man, that a man doesn't just have to be a sexual object to them. He also can be a confidant, can also be a friend, can be a partner, and can be a wise ear to help them with the knucklehead man they might be dealing with. So, you look at this and you say how important it is, I think, for us to, look at the big picture of what is our role as, fathers, to really build those healthy models and build those healthy learning skills, because, most people learn from learn behavior on how, how to really develop a relationship and what a relationship looks like. And a big part, and I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna be maybe a little controversial, but it's been said that women own the access to sex. Men own the access to a relationship, but women own the access to sex. And it's very difficult as women don't value that what they have, I think, in many instances, because that's how we sometimes end up in some of these, situations, with parenting and kids unwanted. And I think as we're learning, as a society has made for us today, we don't really have that liberty to take those chances now based on how they're doing the laws. So you can't just say, I'm gonna get a hot one, I'm gonna drop, I'll play a fake hot game or anything like that, because you ain't gonna be able to play. You're gonna be stuck with them potatoes. You ain't gonna be able to drop it like it's hot. You're gonna be harvesting. You say how to make curly Q fries or crinkle fries or sweet potato. You won't be able to say, So we have to look, and I think that comes a lot with this idea of what dads can implement to their daughters and give them this idea of their self-worth. That, not saying mothers don't. Mothers give them a certain part of self-worth that's the most important. That's why I even think about sometimes you have mothers who have a lot of conflict with their daughters because they are raising another woman. And there's going to be a conflict between that because they have an expectation on what it means for you to be the woman and what it means to be a woman. Same thing for men. When we're raising our sons, there becomes a time when he do like this. He look at his son and say, "What's up?" Because he needs also, and we're trying to show you that, listen, you ain't even taking out the garbage on your own initiative. You need to go ahead and cut this yard on your own initiative. You need to know how to do certain things if you're going to be a certain type of man. Initiative and responsibility. And so, and again, I'm using these things, and I'm not saying what I'm saying is the true all. I'm just saying some representation of, kind of how I see some of these things that come into play. But it's important to know that power and that influence that our roles as parents have on our children. And I think that is a great conversation we're having tonight about looking at us and our relationship with our daughters. So I'll pass it over to some of the other guys to get in here and say their piece.
Well, when I look at it in its totality, dating our daughters piece has a pro and a con to it, just as anything else in life. If you want to get to the gist of it, you got to think about two things when you look at dating our daughters. You got to look at the biological boundaries of dating our daughter, which means we're gonna experience or give to all the nuances of that. So we have those biological boundaries, but we also have to actually look at the generational boundaries. You understand? And so when I'm saying dating our daughters, you'd have to ask yourself, what would make one cherish, in the word you just used, value his daughter within the confines of those biological boundaries, and then go to the generational boundaries and see his neighbor's daughters who the same age as a sex object, when he wouldn't think nothing sexual about his biological daughter. And so this is where the biological and the generational boundaries kind of conflict, and in some instances make us as men hypocrites, to the fact that why we're not seeing our neighbor's daughters or our brother's daughter as we see our own, why we're not valuing our brother's daughter, you understand, as we value our own. And so, and then when you grow up and you get just a little bit older, whatever the case may be, and you bring, and we never really adjust this because it's so acceptable with men with status and quote unquote power. And we never question this dysfunction, right, of that status and that power, when a man can bring home a woman that may be the same age of his daughter, or even a year or two younger than his daughter. And we never question the very values and whatever nuances or better yet, the feelings that your own daughter may have about that. Mm-hmm. And we may not even see that as a disrespect, because we think that, oh, she's grown. And I'm like, okay, whether she's grown or not, what give you that right, to disrespect her biological boundaries with your generational boundaries? You understand that you cross. So you won't cross the biological boundaries, but you still cross the generational boundaries. And then what you do is just bring a daughter home, bring your girlfriend home that's your daughter age. And then we don't see nothing dysfunctional in that. We call it, we may call them sugar daddies, and then you got sugar babies out there, which is our daughters justifying having relationship with their father. So guys, their father's age. And so until we address that and speak to that issue as men, and because it's looked at as a status symbol, when men do it, and almost like a sickness when women do it. And we know right now, and in certain popular situations in the news and the judicial system and courts right now, that's not the case. And we're very selective in our sickness. Well, it's not a sickness when you do it. I say, when you do it when you're older, but it's a sickness when you do it when they're younger. I'm like, well, what's the difference? I mean, if you didn't see them like that when they were 13, why do you see them like that when they're 33? Your daughter should always remain, and you should always be in the eyes of being your daughter, as opposed to what changed. And I can guarantee you the very thing that changed is attached to whatever sickness that we suffer with in silence.
Mm.
Well, I mean, for me, listen to what everything Lightborn was saying. I think it's not even viewed as a sickness, because once you term it, you stop giving it a sickness. When you term it an acceptable term, I should say. So when you're looking at you like you said with the sugar daddies, but then when it's reversed, we just call them cougars, and that's perfectly acceptable. And so what has changed is not so much how you say it? What's changed is the moralistic values of people and making it more widely acceptable so it's palatable for the masses. Because back in the day, it wasn't palatable for the masses. The masses were like, no, we don't want to worry about that. We don't want to deal with that. So now what we're doing is we're giving it a sweet name, a nice term, so that now when you see it, you relate to it and say, oh, well, that person is just doing whatever they're doing. And I think another thing I want to speak to is something else that you said was with the guys. It's kind of like you said, it's contradictory to try to educate our daughters to have standards, but then when they see us with these other women who we treat as objects and not people, you throw them for a loop. And then society is telling you sex sells. So you're gonna make the cuter or sexier you make yourself, the more you're gonna get out of society and the more you're gonna get out of the world. And so what you're trying to instill at home is kind of being contradicted with what you're doing versus what the world's also putting in. And what you're going to do is you're just going to balance out and say, well, because this is happening, I know what you told me, but because these two things outweigh what you're telling me, which is your actions in society, I'm going to lean towards that because that's what everyone else is doing. And that's where you get that answer when you ask people why they're doing what they're doing. It's because everyone else is doing it. So why don't I get a piece? Or why can I have a piece of that? And so that's what you're dealing with when it comes to, and introducing dating your daughters and understanding that where does the moralistic value begin and end when it comes to the societal norms that are being placed on these things that we once shunned?
Well, I mean, because it's such a, we talk about this a lot, and Lionel would agree with me. We sometimes keep forgetting about the privilege that comes with all of this. And then it becomes individualized privilege. Because, I remember there was a time, Ricky Smiley was talking about when Dwayne Wade's child decided that, was going to have on a halter top and certain things at the age that they were. And Ricky Smiley brought up a really good point about that if the child is identifying as something as another gender, if your child that was biologically that gender wanted to do that, you'll have a goddamn fit. You will say, and many of the arguments men have who are not with the mother of their child comes from that argument. Why my daughter got this little ass skirt on with this tank? No, because in our mind as men, we know that it is putting my child, my daughter, as a piece of meat on the block. Because I could sit with my buddies and pals and who are not fathers, and I may have to leave that conversation. I may have to even leave from that area because I can no longer tolerate and be acceptable to what they may be saying, how they may be talking about young 18-year-old tenderonis. That's what they be saying, young tenderonis. Oh, they body tight, sit up like this, all that stuff. I said, man, I gotta move away from y'all. I can't even be here. This is unacceptable because if you think about my daughter like that, because that's the first thing I gotta think in my mind. That's somebody's daughter. And so We don't, I think as a men as fathers, I think men don't think about it, but definitely fathers have that trigger that coming into you because that could be your little girl, you know, and you hate to have to go get that shotgun and nunchucks, the machete, to have to do something to somebody based on this idea that they done did something to your daughter that you don't feel is appropriate and we only feel it's not appropriate because of what's inside our head as men. Don't get it twisted. We don't. The reason why our wives don't think about it, our children's mothers don't think about it, because they women. They're not thinking about the deviant things that we think about as men. It is okay. That's cross culture. You know, that's a difference in gender, different in male thinking and woman thinking. But we know, and that's why we get upset about it. That's why we should be overprotective sometimes of our girls. And I see some dads who have been overprotective. You gotta be careful with that too. Now, you don't want to wrap it up too tight, because when it comes loose, it's loose, loosey goosey, and then you can't wrap it back up after that. You gotta be level headed when you're thinking about it. You gotta be realistic. You know, be realistic. Can't run every one of the interesting young men off. Nice young men who were willing to come to your house to meet you. You running all them off. So you know what's gonna happen. See what that nigga in that back alley dude got to doing all kinds, do anything, because you done ran all off the nice guys, the ones that she could have brought to you. So she gonna go with Jojo Backstreet. You know, so it's just, we have to be thinking and be very conscious that. And I have to go. Listen, I really have to go back. Listen, Lana, you hit a point. I thought you hit a trick, and I didn't want to talk on it. We got to be careful, brothers. Look for somebody close. Listen, I know you want to get something a little bit young, you know, get somebody, you know, maybe whatever. But be mindful. It hurts your children's feelings when the person you date, they could have dated, and they might be too old. I just throw it out there. You with somebody that you gotta, you know, imagine you can have a son, and the girl you dating almost too young for him.
They're disillusioned. I'm gonna tell you, man. I hear a lot that guys date women that are younger so they can shape them, mold them. You see what I'm saying? And it's almost as if you get a young mind so you can turn them into the woman that you think they should be so they could be the right woman for you. I've heard that, and it's a ridiculous notion.
Gee, that sounds crazy. Mold your goddamn children.
Exactly.
Don't mold somebody else, child. If you want to mold your own children. Don't try to mold them, because that sounds abusive to me. That sounds possessive to me. That sounds like I want you to have no dependency other than for me. And it's sexual. See, here's another thing for your child to be dependent upon you, because they depend upon you because you're their provider, and they didn't ask for you to be there. But it changes when this person, y'all supposed to have an equal relationship and there's sexuality involved with it. That's a little bit funny, because you get that power and control that's in there that's almost unbreakable. See, my child can say, forget you, daddy, I'm cool, and not talk to you anymore. But my partner, it take a lot more, because they wrap into me as such a bond based on the intimacy of how our intimacy established and creates who they are based on how we are. And I hear men say that, I want to mold somebody. I'm like, hey man, you need to become a clay maker or something, a base maker. I don't want to mold somebody, because I ain't getting challenged if I mold. Where's the challenge when somebody hold me accountable for something or tell me something that I'm doing wrong? I'm not going to be better if I mold you. We need to be able to mold each other.
Well, that's the thing. We have to, and then we have to just have the hard discussions that, what you have to understand, particularly being a male and historically being a male, that pedophilia is not a R. Kelly issue, even though we want to make him the poster child of it. pedophilia is a history issue, because when you start to really do the history on pedophilia, you'll find out that America is made up of 6 additional continents on one continent. So here's people from 6 continents that gathered on one continent, but they all have the historical male sickness, right? Which is, and I think it's more of a human sickness, but let me explain why it's a male sickness first. It's a male sickness because it's the greatest addiction that a man will have, with always chasing that euphoria that comes with sex, and particularly sex with the younger generation. That's number one. Where it becomes a human addiction is because we all crave the age-old formula of the fountain of youth. And so your interaction with young people, right, can also be an addiction, where you crave that either being young or looking young, or even in some cases acting young, because we are addicted to youth. And that's the closest, sometimes pedophilia is the closest you can get to the fountain of youth. And sometimes, and I'm talking about pedophilia both ways, because it's not an R. Kelly issue, because I can think of countless cases in Florida where people have done it and haven't got half of the time. I'm talking about professional teachers, and was particularly when it was women, didn't get half the time, if not a quarter of the time they gave R. Kelly. And so when you look at that in most cultures and in most continents around the globe, where older men seeking and had an entitlement to younger women based on their status, right? And parents will allow a younger or their younger daughter to marry that older man for not only status reasons, for stability reasons. And so I'm talking about as young as 12, depending on the culture, but just about cross-continent. On every continent, their laws and their, and I'll be honest, the addiction to younger, or being or waiting or being betrothed to a younger or older man to a younger girl is pervasive. And so because of that, you have different cultures. And this is why I'm like, now we're going to throw all this on the reality or the history of pedophilia at the reality of R. Kelly feet, and never really talk about this issue that we have been witnessing for years. We have industry built on this. You understand? We have industry of fathers and good men. I'm not saying they're good men. We're just good men with bad habits. And we built billion-dollar industries on men going to seek and strip joints, as strip joint being another form of the fountain of youth. You understand? And as a result of that, and I didn't know how sick I was until I got married. I didn't know when I wanted to look at a woman the way God created her for me to look at her. You understand? I couldn't without some type of perverted, you understand? Perverted outlook of not so much who she was, but who I wanted her to be. And so she couldn't simply walk down the street just trying to do the best she can to look, to look the best she could in her circumstances without me perverting that. Oh, wow, she got a nice this and that. You understand? And not really seeing her in the totality of who she is, or even her struggle because of my sexual prowess. And so there's a lot of things we can talk about on this issue. I'm going to be quiet right now and open back up once other points come out.
So I was listening, but it was breaking up in and out. I'm trying to catch the gist of it. Are we talking about our daughters being with older men, or are we talking about in general, younger daughters trying to be with older men, or what are we talking about?
We're talking about dating our daughters from both sides, the pros of it and the cons of it when it comes to men in society. So the pros of it is, yeah, we can date our daughters in the good aspect of it when it comes to our daughters. But what happened? How do we apply it when it comes to the daughters of other men? And how do we see it?
All right, this is Dr. Doom. Just wanted to chime in real quick. I guess in the situation I'm in, a little bit different. When I'm looking at dating my daughters, I have a blended family. And you know, to read between the lines, my fiance right now, I just call her my wife. We've been together for 8 years. She brings 3 older daughters into the game. I have 2 younger daughters and 3 sons. The oldest daughter is now 27. You know, just so you can see the ages that they've been around. 27, 25, and 21. Just so you can get a feel for, you know, how much they've grown up around me. And one of them models, like for real, represented by front management down here. You know, and I just say all the background because everybody's talking about physicality and all this stuff. But for me, you know, when I look at dating daughters, you know, the most important thing that's been for me and their mother is to give them an example of a normal relationship between a man and a woman.
Exactly.
Because the mother, her marriage didn't work out with their father, you know, and there was, you know, things that went on in blah blah, you know, you know, where we are now is to give her older daughters, she just got proposed to, the other one is you know, just had the grandchild, so she's dealing with a man, but it's to give them an example of what a normal, healthy relationship should look like, and trying to give them that every opportunity we can. And on the flip side of that, with my 2 younger daughters now that are 10 years old and 11 years old, you know, gonna be 12, is to let them see a normal, healthy relationship between a mother and father figure because of the chaos that went on between me and their mother. So, you know, dating daughters, you know, for me has been, you know, from one extreme to the other, and teaching 3 older, younger women that are now getting into the arena of real adult relationships, you know, one having a baby, one about to get married at 27. It's a whole different light with them as opposed to the younger ones, like, you know, that they don't have to see the chaos, you know, and this isn't coming from a bitter baby daddy, but the chaos in the mama's house, which is just phenomenal, you know, that they don't have to see that. They can get something regular from me and my fiance that I deal with. So, you know, for the whole dating the daughter thing, it's just a whole different dynamic for me because of, you know, my particular situation.
Now, Dr. Doom, I'm glad you said that, because
That's good.
I think important is example.
Right.
Sometimes you have to set that example for them to see it, not so much just talk about it, because we can tell them what to look for in a man, and we can tell them, you know, how you should be treated, but to model that treatment, especially and that's something that I was going to ask later on, but to model that treatment not only with the person that you're with, but also with their mom. Even if the mom is rough with you, model the behavior of a respected man and how a man should, you know, interact with the woman. And I think that's important, and it's a strong example, because that's what they're going to take away. When you say that 27-year-old, she's looking at your relationship with her, with her mom, and saying, yo, you know what, whether or not the relationship prior to with her mom was bad, when you step in, she goes, yeah, that's how she should be treated, and that's how every woman should be treated. And that's what's important when you talk about dating your daughters. It's not just about, you know, telling them and taking them out once in a while and treating them nicely, but it's also mimicking it on the other end to say it not only extends to how the man treats you, but watch how he treats other women, because that's a telltale sign of how they are.
Gene, you say something that's so powerful, and I think is really, really important that as fathers, we have to remember and think about. And sometimes we may not think about it because for some of us, we're so focused kid interests, what's in the best interest of our kid. And by saying that, we forget that the mother is sometimes in the best interest of the kid. They're not, you know, and so we treat mom, and we may treat the mother, the wife, the mother, like crap. And have this idea that our daughter's going to have a certain self-esteem, a certain self-worth, all of this because we pouring so much into her. But she got to compare and contrast that to the learned behavior that she's getting every day in the house. So we have to watch ourselves. We need to look in the mirror and say, how am I talking to the mother? How am I talking to women in general? Now, we can't say, well, my daughter princess and F these B's over here and these H's and say it like it ain't, well, that ain't my daughter because guess what? At any moment, somebody could change the dynamic and it can be your daughter. Your daughter could be the person. You know, I'm watching something. Never mind. Let's tell track. I'm about to talk about Snoop Dogg, but we can keep going.
No, you're right about that. And that only speaks to the laws of reaping and sowing. And so I think you shouldn't put out something you don't want if you don't expect to get it back. And particularly if we got daughters, and we can raise the best daughters in the world, but then you have to pay attention to what you may have left out there. You understand, whatever weeds you left out there can be the very weeds that come back and choke the virtue out your daughter. You understand? And put the most brightest of women, the most smartest of women, and guess what? The most strongest of women. You understand? In the most weakest of circumstances. And if you find out anything else, the most powerful thing in the world, and particularly for a woman, is a woman in love. And so love can transcend common sense. Love can transcend that doctorate degree you have. Love can transcend your career and detour everything about you if it's applied in the wrong place. So here it is, the right thing in the wrong place, you understand, can still produce a wrong result. And then sometimes if it's strong enough, it can produce a right result, but oftentimes a wrong result. I was never really good at arithmetic when they say a positive and a negative is this and that, but you understand, it kind of goes along those lines. And so, and again, a life may just very well owe you that. And so it may not have anything to do with what your daughter did. Your daughter might have been the nicest and the sweetest person all her life just to reap the person you were. You understand? So now you're a good changed person, and you took that good changed person and you gave it to your daughter, and you raised your daughter with the good changed person you was, just for her to run into the person you used to be. And these are things that we got to really consider, because at some case you think, oh, because it's not externally hurting somebody, that internal hurt don't matter. And it truly does. So I think it's a lot of things that we have to recondition ourselves to, because we got a history of male privilege that has really rendered us sick, and in some cases dysfunctional, because at the same time we would get on our daughter if she brought a man to our house. Hey, let's say she's 18 and she brought a 40-something-year-old man to your house. It's not going to sit really well with you. But you wouldn't feel the same way as the verses. You know what I'm saying? The roles will switch. Well, you would think it's more of a banner or a privilege or even hip and cool to bring a younger woman in the presence of your daughter, but not cool for your daughter to bring an older man in the presence of you. You understand? It's not going to sit well. So I think we're very hypocritical when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Hey,
how Stella got her groove.
No.
Even worse.
We talking about something. It's not like, look who coming to dinner, grandpa prediction. Because listen, you can imagine, let me tell you something. Hey, Lana, as you say that, I sit there and think, look, when my daughter get about 18, 19, I'll be like in somewhere in the 60s. God forbid. Listen, she can bring, God forbid a guy walk up in there born in 1985. Okay? The guy walk up there in 1983, he was born, coming in there about, hey man, we're gonna have a problem, boss. You only like 10, you only a couple 10, you ain't even 10, 12 years older younger than me. That's a problem, brother. I ain't gonna be cool. I love who you love, but give my daughter a chance to love somebody closer to her age, dog. You know what I'm saying? Let's give her a chance to love somebody close to her age, you know. And I need her to take care of me if I fall down. She got to make a choice between taking care of her daddy or taking care of her husband. We in the same old folks home. That ain't cushy done.
I think even with and listen, I'm a God-fearing man. I love the Lord with all my heart. I'm a Christian to the core, but I have to understand the manipulation sometimes of the word and various passages in the Bible that we manipulate for our own gratification. And so, yes, we will preach the gospel for our own gratification, and we'll take what is actually stated in the Bible to be a 10-year difference, which means Abraham and Sarah were still within the same generation, right? And exacerbated, you understand, the 20-year and 30-year differences, and then try to justify it as gospel. When we know that, number one, you have to understand how many years it takes to actually establish a generation of people. That's number one. And number two, if that is so, then you guys cannot even be, because we're big on compatibility, unequally yoked. We love that, and it always seemed to work in everything else, but other than when it comes to generationally or when it comes to age difference. But we'll preach the unequally yoked sermon everywhere. Oh yeah, you can't be unequally yoked. You can't be unequally yoked in this. You can't be unequally yoked in that. Which means that you can't she can't have this job and you can't have this job, or you can't have this kind of money, this kind of money. You understand? So we unequally yoked in poverty. We unequally yoked and professionally. But when it comes to, or even in some cases sexually, but when it comes to generationally, we're dead silence on that, because when you come for the dominant culture, being the man, right, we're going to preserve certain injustices for ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's the privilege. Right. And so we're going to take something again, I'm like, man, listen, Sarah and Abraham was only 10 years apart. They're in the same generation. So you can't justify that when you're 20 and 25 years different, have a 25 years different, and want me to say, that woman shouldn't have did you like that because she should have understand you. I'm like, wait. That girl don't have the same experience you do. You're old enough to be her father, and guess what? When she outgrow her dysfunction, and she wake up to the reality that you are old enough to be her father, either the two things she can do: she can leave you or cheat on you. Because that's what's going to be the outcome. I've seen it my whole life and may even take part of it. You understand? But I understand I have to respect the nuances in the generations of which we were born. You understand? I already know right now what a disconnect going to be, because we get in the same car and you want to listen to 103.5 and I want to listen to Hot 105. You understand? For the other viewers out of state.
No, listen.
Hip hop.
Listen, even better if they got satellite radio. I want to listen to NPR. You want to listen to XM hip hop number one. You know? Right. Brother, I'm listening to NPR trying to hear it. You already know.
And something that Lightborn said, even although you got the same generation, 10 years is a gap. Because you got to realize, when I was 10 years old, you were just one. What I was experiencing, you don't know about. And it's always going to be that gap. There's and mentally they say you catch up, but experience-wise, you won't catch up. Because think of, let's go back to something as simple as when I was 10. Let's just say back in civil rights era, when I was 10, I couldn't drink from the white water fountains. By the time you're 10, you're drinking at the white water fountains. You won't understand the experience that I had to get beat up for taking a sip because I was thirsty. So there is still a gap of experience that will never match up and that you may never understand because of that 10-year gap. So it's a lot that goes into it when you talk about, and I completely agree with you, like when you're saying there's a lot that goes into it when you're talking about relationships and what it really means to bring home someone who's younger than you are. The 10-year gap.
Somebody that's older than you are.
Then that's older than you are.
We putting a big pressure on the kids, but I think if that pressure go both ways, something got to take. Listen, I'm keeping it real. I have a concern if my daughter looking for somebody to be her daddy. Okay, I got a concern about what did I not do? What did I not provide? What did I not present that she didn't see that she didn't need another daddy? She needed a partner. Because I should have already put in play the opportunity to show her what providing means. So she ain't got to look for somebody to provide for. She got to look for somebody that, but also put in play the boundary between me and her of me being a father and you being my child. So you ain't going to talk to me and tell me everything, or talk to me in a way that doesn't respect elders. And I think that's a part that we kind of almost want to throw some of that out there. We don't want to respect elders. We don't even have no identification for elders, and that's a hurting our community in some sense. But then also, I go back to say the elders got to also recognize that they're elders. You can't hold on to the position for 60 years. You're gonna run the position for 60 years. At some point, you need to be an elder, take the back seat and say, come on, young people, come on, young man, come on, young lady, do this and come sit on my porch when you have questions on what you need to do next. Not that I'm still running the ship 60 years later. And then you don't want to put the skinny jeans on with the Jordans and the tight shirt out there protesting. Come on, brother. Come on now, that ain't even you.
Well, I actually got a pair of skinny jeans and some Jordans. I actually look good in it, but nevertheless, you understand? I think
Lana, hold on. Well, listen, you're not at the age that you should. We talking about the age that Gene was trying to make himself be. Talking about he was in the civil rights drinking out the white water fountain. Gene at the age himself almost. Look, Gene at age himself, he's like 86 years old. You know, so
No, I was there. I know about that.
Hey. Go ahead, Elder.
Yeah. So I was saying, I know about that. Those water fountains, going back in, and going to the restaurant. You had to go through the back door to the back of the restaurant, and there was a little room window where you would get your food when you were traveling. They hang your food out that little window. You couldn't go into the restaurant. But I dated my daughter when she was, like I said, 10, 8, between 10, 11. We also went out when she was about 12. I showed, opening the door for her, pulling her seat back. She's sitting down, and she's able to read the menu and order what she wants. And we left and came back, and she thanked me. Opened the door because she see me doing that with her mom. I always open the door. It's time for my wife and my daughter when she was here. And come to find out, she saw this in another young man, and that's who she's married to, and they've been married since 2004. Now I think it is. Yeah, and he's a podiatrist, sports medicine, and she teaches. She's a professor of health and physical fitness in Alabama. And it just did me proud when I see who she chose to marry, and see what he's doing. How he take care of her. I see it.
Let me go here, and as we break, I see that we have somebody in the chat and they was asking a question. I'm asking them to give them some clarification so we can kind of maybe even clarify. You said, I know his question was, what do you do when mistakes have already been made? And I just want to see if he chime in and tell us exactly what point that is and the mistakes being made and what he means by that, so we can jump on that. But Elder Thomas said something that was so important, is that we also forget about the learned behavior that our sons see us do. We put that energy into our daughters and we give the energy to them and their moms, but our sons who now are able to watch us do that, know that that's what they've been doing. And that's how Elder Thomas' daughter's husband was able to maybe impress her, because he knew what to do. Because he might have mirrored in touch. Okay, Brother Ronald said, marry someone who is, okay, I say marry someone who is 15 years younger, 20 years younger, or 25 years younger. Okay, he gave us a couple, 15 years younger, 20 years younger, 25 years younger. What do we do when we already
So what he's saying, just so I can get some clarification, the mistake is marrying someone who's 15, 20, or 25 years younger than you.
Right.
Or older.
How do you deal with somebody when marrying someone that is younger than you, or with that more than 10-year gap? What do you what can you do about it? What can you
I'm not. No, you want to go ahead and answer? Go ahead, Ron, and I'll come out.
I'm gonna say. I'll say first. One of the most important factors, I think, that is, remember that you don't want to imprison that person, because a part of that is someone who's 20 years, 25 years, even 15 years younger than you, don't have the same experiences as you. And sometimes we can seem like, hey, we're going to help them not make the mistakes we made. But what we end up doing is we stop them from blossoming in who they should really be. And sometimes we become those, I think that we also become those parents again. Because guess what? I'm going to keep it, let's just talk sexual libido. Okay? Let's talk sexual libido. Typical man who can keep his erection at a certain level, average age type, once we're in the 50s, everything, especially depending on how you taking care of your body, what kind of diet you have, what kind of exercise you can do all those things and still have some erectile dysfunction, some of those sexual dysfunctions that impede your performance in sexuality, right? What's going to happen in that case where this young person, a young lady that you're dealing with, is coming into her sexual prime? What are you doing? What is happening to what's going to occur for her? And you setting it up for her to actually be I hate to say it, but sometimes to be unfaithful. I'm not gonna say it's right, but it's something that probably could end up happening. Because already when you was, listen, I can't, listen. One thing I do, I love our men and I love our fathers, and I support you to the end. But also loving you and supporting you, men, got to tell the truth. The tricky dick things we might be out here doing or carrying on sometimes. We know it because it's our nature. It ain't like this something that we bad for. It's our nature. We ovulating every day. Ovulate, wanting to chase and get behind. But what happens when we're no longer at that sexual space and our woman is? What happens? What happens to her? And really, we done probably gave her quite a few kids, so she spent most of her life raising these kids. And once those kids gone, we around here with the bad hip, bad knee, and she's still looking hot. I don't know what we do. Hey, listen.
I saw the not that I'm hating on this particular celebrity I saw, but nevertheless I did see the picture, and it was and I think indirectly the people the people who posted the picture and did the story indirectly was trying to take a serious story, but better yet, I think it was a disingenuous the way they did it. But what they did was took the picture of this particular celebrity. This celebrity had to have been 75. The girl he was dating was 25. So he got about a good solid 25 years. And don't worry about it. We ain't calling celebrity out, but I'm just saying I saw the picture. Keep in mind, he's 75 and she's 25. The problem with this particular picture is the 75-year-old and the 55-year-old was in a situation or in a circumstance or an environment that's conducive to 25-year-olds. Simply put, they're both in bathing suits. And boy, you can't get no rude awakening until you see the difference with these two in the bathing suit, and it is hot. And so the dynamics of them being in that situation, she's looking gorgeous at 55 in her little bathing suit, and he's looking like he's ready to pass out at 75, and they're both standing in the ocean. And so the writer goes on to say something about she was 55. So you went on to the writer goes, I read into the story, and the writer goes on to bring up one of the characters that he played. You see how they play it? And I mean, they're really playing on the story. So I'm reading it and I know the history of this particular individual. So I'm like, oh, y'all think y'all really slick. And so what y'all doing is saying, oh, look at such and such. So they're putting a really good spin on it. But when you read into it, they're really making fun of it. Right. You understand? Because not so much of what they're writing is making fun of it as it is the very picture that they're showing really makes you laugh, because you're like, wow. So this is what this really. So if you put clothes on a situation and you dress the situation up and you guys are on the red carpet, right? It doesn't even look, it looks acceptable. If they were on the red carpet and he's in his tux and she's in her little gown, it looks, you can like, oh, wow, that's what it's, it looks successful. It looks glamorous. But when you put them in their bare nature, which means you get to see his body in its totality and you get to see her body in its totality, then you start to see the dynamics of the age difference of what we're talking about and the generational age difference. And I'm going to be honest with you, almost the ridiculousness of this, because you're saying to yourself, oh, wow, what could she possibly want with him? And this is what the photo actually looks like. You understand? But nobody wants to say it because of the man's status. Mm-hmm. And so what we try to do is wrap our mind around accepting it. When we know if you put both of them in everyday life, that they both just have average jobs, then we can be blatant out because we don't feel like we have nothing to lose or gain when we criticize that situation that we wouldn't normally criticize because now he's at celebrity status. And so that particular situation was a wake-up call for me, which really inspired this particular conversation when it comes to our daughters, because I think our daughters are second and really supposed to be the second precious thing next to our wife. Mm-hmm. And maybe sometimes the dysfunction start because maybe we haven't really took a pilgrimage within ourselves to really see our wives, right? Like we're trying to see our daughter. Mm. So we never really got the healing to see and the healing to become the wholeness to really see our wives like we're supposed to see them, and in order to really effectively transfer that to our daughters. And so we do a lot of things like, and I'm not knocking this, but we do a lot of things like opening car doors and different things like that. You understand? To compensate for what we don't do for our wife. You understand? Or what we may not be internally to our wife and not even face those different demons that we may have, you understand, that hinder us for being the husbands to our wives that we could be.
Now, you saying that, but I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna put this out there. Some people didn't have the luxury to choose their wives. You see what I'm saying? Like some people went to a circumstance trying to do a good thing. They met the woman, they got her pregnant. Would you have been with her long term if she wasn't pregnant? You get into that relationship with that relationship, which then turns sour on you. So you don't have the opportunity to do that because you really didn't choose that person.
J-Rock, you froze.
So say that again. Oh,
You were froze for a second, bro.
okay. No, what I was saying is sometimes we don't choose that. We don't have the opportunity to choose that person. So what Lionel was saying, I agree with, because in some circumstances, you don't choose that person that you're with. Circumstances choose that person you're with versus you having the option to be with that person, if I'm making any sense. So what happens is you don't then do those treatments of opening a door, taking them out, wanting to get to know them, spend some more time with them because you're thrusted into a relationship that you really didn't want to be a part of. And so now you're stuck. So for those who have the option, who've gone out and chosen the person that they want to be with, it's going to be very easy for them to do that because I'm impressing you. I'm trying to be that chivalrous man that you want, and I'm trying to show you my attributes. But when I get thrown into a situation that I don't want to be there, you're not going to get any of that goodness.
Go
ahead.
Gene, don't leave out the other end. You brought we listen, let's go on the spectrum. We can keep on going right down the spectrum. Let's go down to these jokers down here who do open up doors. They open up doors until they ain't open nothing. They ain't open up doors till they open up them legs. They ain't opening up, they ain't pulling out nothing. And I'm just saying that people, listen. And then we had to be able to teach our children, our boys, not to be that disingenuous. We had to be able to teach our girls to be acceptable and recognize that kind of scammery. You know, that's a scam. You know, he bring you some flowers. You know, brought some flowers up to, listen, my years of working in domestic violence showed and proved that the most romantic, giving, loving, looking like people was the abusers. The women at your job would faint to say, I can't believe you don't want to stay with him. That would be me half to death in this house. But what you see is he brought me lunch up here. He brought some flowers. He got all, but that's all control tactics. So we have to, that's the thing. We got to also be mindful of how these control tactics sometimes play for our young ladies. And that they understand, don't be fooled by the fool's gold.
But you also have to, I'm going to play devil's advocate. You also have to teach the women to be acceptable of that behavior, though, chivalrous behavior. Because you have it where some women, where you open the door for a woman and she's like, my arms aren't broken. Why are you holding the door for me? Where instead of just saying, thank you, and moving on. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of teaching your children or teaching your children. One, you teach the men how to be men. Then you teach the women how to allow a man to be a man and what to look for in a man, because those are the two components that are missing, especially when you start talking about generational wise. Because going back, what I saw when I was growing up, it's a whole lot different than what I see when my kids were growing up and watching their generation come up, because it's a different mindset. And it's, although you try to teach the kids, right, to do the right thing and to be chivalrous and hold the doors open, sad to say, you have kindness mistaken for weakness. And they don't know how to separate the two.
Well, I think it's better in some cases. And again, these are different generations. So I think we have to respect that woman's right to not want her carded open. I mean, if that don't impress her, we shouldn't be depressed by it. You understand? And again, if we say it again, if it don't impress her.
Hold on. But what he's saying is that I get what he's saying is that, we have to have them be susceptible of that when it is a kind gesture to when he is looking weak.
No, I understand that. I understand that, and I don't have a problem with that, but you got to understand that's your perspective. You understand? And we can't see, I'm like, okay, but we got to also value her perspective. If she's not impressed by that, right? then we can't devalue the fact that she's not impressed by that, because at least she respects you enough to let you know that. And then guess what? Just because somebody may not be impressed by you opening the door, that don't mean, it's just saying that as a man, you have to figure out what it takes to impress her. And I think sometimes we like to buy gifts for people that we think they should appreciate, but only just because we brought it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, listen, I appreciate the gift, but I don't like, you understand? Or I may be downright allergic to certain things. And so what we have to do is just respect each other's preferences, that woman says, okay, and then she may have a traumatic experience when it came to men that open a door. The last experience with her boyfriend or her abusive boyfriend might have been a door opener. You know what I'm saying? And so we gotta really respect and look for the nuances. And speaking back to the whoever put the gentleman who put the question about the what if you with a person that's 15 or 20 years younger than you, and what do you do about that situation? Then you gotta respect their right to be wrong, because Lord knows you had yours.
Repeat that again. Respect your right to be wrong.
You got to respect their right to be wrong. Remember, it's an age gap. And so you made your mistakes. And they're still at the age where they still have to make theirs. And just like somebody respected your right to be wrong to get you back to the right you need to be, it's the same thing with that. So when you signed on for getting somebody younger than you, you got to sign on to knowing that there's a certain level of immaturity that they can have than you. And I think that plays into, I think it was Allen Iverson. You had the elder basketball players was criticizing his mannerisms and stuff like that. And he said something to the fact that, these guys expecting me to act like to be a 55-year-old man and 25-year-old body. You understand? A 55-year-old man or have a 55-year-old knowledge with a 25-year-old experience. And so he's 100% right with that. And you have that just as an older person getting older, we will, it's just in our nature to compare, contrast and compare. You understand? To validate who we are and particularly where we are. And sometimes it's a little envy and jealousy that goes along with that. And so when it comes to, if you did fall in love with somebody younger than you, and that person genuinely fell in love with you, you still gotta give them the right and give them the time to for their right, respect their right to be wrong. Again, only because of the age difference, they're going to make 25-year-old mistakes and 35-year-old mistakes, particularly when you don't reach the age of 45.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I want to address something real fast, real quick, because something that Lightborn said, I want to comment on, because he was saying, because you didn't impress the woman by opening the door for them. And I want to take it back only to the fact that when you do kind gestures, you're not trying to impress anybody. You're doing it because it comes from you naturally. And I think when you do it to impress, you go back to what Ron was saying, when you're doing it just so you can get the draws. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And so it changes how you behave, right? And so now you got to try to see, I agree with, now you got to try to figure out what you got to do to get the draws, because this isn't working. So let me take another roundabout. But as a person who generally is doing something out of nature, because that's what you're taught, and that's how you are, and that's how you behave. You're not doing it to impress anybody. You're just doing it because it's you. And oftentimes, a woman, just like a man has to respect a woman being a woman has to respect the man being a man. Allow him to do what's in his nature as long as it treats you well. And going back to the gift thing, I do agree with that. I do agree with the gift thing, because sometimes when it comes to gifts, you learn the person. You don't just get a gift to get a gift, because again, you're trying to impress. You learn the person, you understand the person, then what you get them, they will always love it. If you see what I'm saying? Because now you're getting something that's for them, not because you just want them. And there's a big difference.
Well, you say something, Gene, and I think it's really about getting to know people's love languages. And a big thing that's so important to me is, even in my own personal relationship, I don't do a lot of things. I don't do them. I don't listen, because I can only give you what I know how to give. And you can make a decision what I give you don't want. I'm probably not gonna open the door for you. But you'll never walk in a building before me. I ain't gonna go run around the car like I'm the chauffeur and open up the door unless the car I'm riding in is hard to open the door and I gotta do a little thing. But other than that, but you know what? You're never gonna walk in no door. You're never gonna walk on the outside of the street. That's just some natural things I do. There are certain things that I do that's not the same thing. And so I think that we think about remembering that we got to remember every individual has their way to show their love and what love means to them. We sometimes be trying to make people do what the standard is. This is the standard. Sometimes that's not what people want for the standard. Some people don't want that. Bring me flowers. Some people don't like flowers. They're allergic. They sneeze. But you bringing flowers because that's the traditional thing. Bring the flower. Bring the flower. Oh, I'm sorry. I bring the flowers. Sometimes they might just want you to wash the dishes. Load the washing machine. You know, sweep the floor. Mop the kitchen. Boy, I love this man. He cleaned the bathroom. You know what? I throw my dirty clothes on the floor and he pick them up and put them in the hamper. And guess what? That's you. But here's the point. That's me. And guess what? My kids see me and see how I do. And then they start getting out of these stereotypes of what gender roles is and what they could do and what they should do. And that's what it means to represent, to be a good man, or what it means to be a good woman, because we can't define that for people from outside. It's for people to define for them inside. And they can only define it from inside of who they are. You asking me to do something way beyond my skill point. And that's, if you got a young person who that's way beyond their skill point, you asking them to live up and be something that they can't be. And they're not gonna be able to do it. And now you mad at them. You got to step up your game. But what? I didn't even know it was a game. You know, stepping up a game, I didn't even know it was a game. I thought we were just in a relationship. You got to step up your game. I say, hey, man.
Ron, you know what? Think about that, Ron, and this is where I think we, as fathers, I'm going to call it the father's privilege. Sometimes I think we want our women to choose, or our daughters to choose men that remind of us, like many us, like Lionel Juniors. And you know what? I don't want my daughter to have a Lionel Jr. Have the man she chose. And I think that's the conflict and just the arrogance of being a man, of feeling like like the man should be to our standards as opposed to her standards. And which means when we set the standard of the man we think she should have, and they've always, almost every time, end up getting a man that's totally the opposite of who we are. Which made God, and remember I told you, love is the most equal playing field in the world. And so it never favors somebody else or one side or the other. It's always equal, and it gives you not who you were, you understand? But who it's going to take for her to be in that relationship, for him to be in that relationship, so they can come to an authentic outcome, as opposed to coming into an imitation of what their daddy mama used to be. And so with my stepdad and mom, I had a great stepdad. And I never seen him open the door for my mom, but I always saw him purchase my mom a car. And so if you ask me as a child, what was more impressive, him opening the door, or always opening the car door, or always buying a car for my mom? It's the same habit, because he showed me how to, he showed me that with my mom, made sure she never walked. And I do the same exact behavior with my daughter. You understand? I mean, not my daughter, but with my wife. And so I mimicked what he did for my mom, just always kept her every 4 to 5 years in another car, always kept her car fresh. And it's the same behavior that I mimicked with my wife. You understand? So I'm trying to tell you, it's more impressive ways, you understand? And more creative ways and more sacrificial ways as well to just opening the car door, because you can have a guy to open a car door and that's all he do, and it stops right there. And he think that, oh, I impress with this with this basic standard. You know how the basic standard, you have the luxury standard and the like cars. You got the luxury edition and the basic edition. The basic edition come with the roll down windows, cloth furniture, you know, cloth seating and stuff like that. But you got the luxury edition that comes with the leather seats, power this, power that, and power this. And sometimes we just keep our boys and train our boys to just have the basic edition. And nothing wrong with the basic edition, but you got to tell them, like, listen, the basic edition is just the starting point. You understand? But it's not the zenith of where you should be creatively, especially when it comes to your significant other.
But Lana, and I think you said it's so powerful, because what it sets the tone for you to have to do is to, well, I think it. Check 1, 2, Lionel.
Yeah,
I hear you.
We hear you.
Oh, I thought I lost you from it. I was just saying that it is so important for the power. Like we forget that when we start making those standards and all those things you describe, we don't allow people to join each other in relationship. You know, because one of the points is, do I like this? Do I like that? And I think this goes back to what you said earlier, Rob, when sometimes we forced to be in relationships. But you know what, also when we forced to be in a relationship, we sometimes got to search out the things that's beneficial in that relationship, the things that do work. If we go into everything with a negative, we gonna always come out with a negative. If we look and say, what are the good parts of this and how can I work through it? Then you begin to see that. And then we begin to teach our kids that same value system. Look for the part, because when we talked about earlier, when you start seeing the stretch in the relationship between the age gap, if you can really look and see, you can start seeing that these things don't match, not just for the older person, but also the younger person can see them. And then they were able to have a conversation about it and say, you know, I don't know if this is working. And let's talk about, because I think this is the most important, let's talk about how we work this out, how we make this look better for us and to continue our relationship. And so that's one of the big things, and I'm speaking to Ronald right now, is, you know, even though we might already be in that disposition, 20-year difference or what have you, we have to not go into our corner and get defensive. We got to move to the middle of the ring and start to talk it out. No boxer want to watch the box when you running around in all the circles, when boxers want to see you fight. Now I'm using this as an analogy, and, you know, but I want to see you come to the middle of the ring and talk it out. Because at the end of the time you're talking this out, you can say, oh, do we stay in this ring or do we go to our corners and get out of this ring? So our kids don't have to see the pain and the agony of us hurting each other. As long as we start hurting each other, we definitely hurting them. And that starts a cycle of new going into a relationship thinking that this is what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do things. That's continuing that negative cycle. You know, one of the biggest issues I used to have with mothers, sometimes when they would leave domestic violence situations, is that they wouldn't tell the kids the reason why they left. So the kids just had the idea that we moved away from daddy. And they never took the acknowledgement to say the stuff that daddy was doing shouldn't have been being done. And that because he was doing what he was doing shouldn't be done, we had to go because he needed to work on himself and he can't really work with us. Whatever things she told him, but she don't tell him none of that. He'll just be gone. And then the kid, 2 years later, when he in high school, punching his girlfriend in the stomach. Because he never learned that that wasn't appropriate. That's not the right thing to do. The young lady letting the boy grab her by the hair and push in the car because that's what she learned that was okay to do. So that communication is so important. And if we have to really be focused to it and have those hard conversations with each other as adults and with our kids so they can be informed. That's a big thing. We talk about having warranties and read the fine line, but we don't do that in our own family sometimes. And we really need to put the warranties out there, read the small print, and give the warnings to what can really happen and how these things happen for us. Because if we don't, everyone thinks that it's okay and we keep moving in that same direction. and you get the same results 2 generations later. Not that next generation, 2 generations later, you got the same result.
I think another thing is also when you're dealing with the age gap is aligning your goals. Sometimes we're on 2 different time frames. And that's one thing you have to understand, that when you're in a relationship with someone who's older, whether it's the woman who's older or the man who's older, you're on 2 different time frames. Someone's thinking about retirement while the other's thinking about living life, right? And so figure out where you guys can meet and set those goals at the pivotal points in your relationship. Because one thing that was said earlier, which I agree 100%, is don't try to cage the other person, because you've lived your life. Don't try to catch them up to where you are, because they still have a lot more growing to do. Understand that you will have the differences, but talk it out and get to the commonalities. Set some goals for each other. Talk about what it is that you want out of the relationship, what you want out of life, what you want out of the other person, as far as what support looks like. All that stuff has to be discussed, because if you don't, and you think that they're going to be on the same page as you, and there's such a large age gap, you are strongly mistaken. And that's just a recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm.
You're just waiting for that relationship to blow up one day with one of you saying, you don't understand me. You never understood me in the first place, because y'all never had those conversations to get to know one another, to understand where you are mentally, not even physically, but where you are mentally, in order to be able to support each other into that relationship going forward.
And Ron,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, and Ron and J. Rod's defense. And matter of fact, in these young men, I mean, in the men defense who may be in a relationship, would be if you're an older man and she's a younger woman. In their defense, myself, Ron, and J. Rod has been trained to think like we think. So I'd have to give somebody who's been conditioned, right? And there's a difference between being trained and conditioned. If I wasn't working in the field I was working in, doing social work, I would function in the condition of who I am, as opposed to in the training of who I am. And because I do a certain particular job, I don't see, and I'm trained to really deal with women, and particularly young women, in a particular way. So I know the nuances, I know the dangers, I know the pros, I know the cons. I'm trained to notice that. But when you're conditioned, just generally, just being a male and just instinctively conditioned to just chase women and women and be predator or women being prey. You understand? That's a conditioning. And that's not just a black or a young or old conditioning. That's a worldwide conditioning for men. And so this is not an indictment or a judgment against men who may have been conditioned, right, to just chase young women. And because I come to be myself and Ron and Jay, we're at a little advantage only because our job requires us and have trained us to notice those different things. And so we have been reconditioned to see women a certain way. But when you've been conditioned, and then you can be victimized by your condition, which means that not only you can get a younger woman who just by experience alone may just wind up cheating on you because, you know, she got, you know, she have young friends and you guys are not in the same generation. And so they just making jokes about you, and she can succumb to that peer pressure. Oh, you still with that old man? Well, you got that young guy over there. And it's just it's the game. I know the game because I used to be young too. But now that I'm older, I'm like, listen, we still left that same game out there and we know the game. But we want the game to change now that we're older. And so we hoping that this younger woman can respect where we are, even though she's not where we are, right? And so with that, but it also can come and run into a lot of other things, like what R. Kelly experienced. He became a victim of his own conditioning. And so I'm not saying, I'm like, no, he's supposed to get locked up. 30 years, I don't know about all that. But what I will say, he became a victim of his own conditioning because, again, that man is an entertainer. He's not, you understand, a clinical psychologist or a social worker. So he doesn't have that training to recognize and accept those boundaries that we have been trained to accept.
And the majority of us, and this is why I said earlier, when I'm with my male friends who are not fathers, I don't have very many of them today because I hang up mostly with fathers, you begin to see that difference, that the tingle that goes on. So, you know, again, because you start thinking about, hey, you know, maybe if you're a father with no daughters, you might not feel that way, you know. Or maybe even sometimes let's go to the football field about your son maybe not being the most athletically inclined, but all the other dads talking about my son, he going to the pro, this and that. And your son sitting over there saying he want to go do the cheerleading, you know. And these are the kind of things that we have to remember as fathers. We look at it completely different. If my son wanted to go be a cheerleader, I want him to go be the best cheerleader that he could ever be, because that's an athlete. A male cheerleader got to lift another human being up with one hand and hold him in the sky and throw him up and catch him. You know, not everybody can do that. You know, so you begin to look at these things and begin to say, hey, we're going to pull it. We have to kind of pull it together and realize that, you know, make that announcement as fathers. We take this charge and we look at things in a certain way. We're not just being laissez-faire like our male counterparts. And not to say anything wrong with them, because that's just the nature of the beast. I ain't never questioning what they're doing. I'm just gonna always throw the devil's advocate and what else at my brothers and my sisters, because that if you don't do that, that means you might as well just lay down with them.
Hey, Ron, I think we may be at time, but I wanted to definitely shout out all the brothers who are always, you know, who are the Lawrence and the Jay and Dr. Doom and Frederick and we got Travis and this guy. Hey, he got a what you got a oh, okay, love those who love you. Okay.
It's Donald like more.
That's Donald.
Donald, right? Donald, you need to put your name.
Nah, that's for specific reasons. That's for specific reasons. That
okay.
That thing I have up there, which that moniker I have up there, is to remind everybody you got to love those who love you always.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. And guess what? Greatly appreciated. But man, I'm always just grateful that you guys are on here to just lend your energy and your spirit to just whatever words and inspiration that comes up in these fatherhood discussions. And I'm indebted. So thank you.
And again, we will say this as we come to the end. I'm glad, like Boyne said that, because I was looking at the clock. Just remember that, hey, we have a more intimate, more vulnerable conversation on Wednesday nights. If you look in the chat that we have here. If you look in the comments on this video, you can definitely see how to get in contact, how to join the Zoom meeting for Wednesday nights at 6:30. And this week we're going to continue this conversation, but we're also going to move it a little bit more into, you know, how to really look at healthy relationships and establish them not just for our daughters, but also for our sons and also for us, because sometimes we don't forgot how to have, or sometimes we never learned how to have healthy relationships. So definitely, if you know a father, if you are a father, definitely join us tomorrow. If not, you can join us next Tuesday for our next topic on Fatherhood Talks. With that being said, gentlemen, let's get out of here. Let's do it the right way. I am a man of honor.
I am a man of honor.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of respect who opened up doors.
I am a man of respect.
I said I am. I said that you are.
You are.
I said that we are.
We are.
Championship
Father.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, hey, we'll tell you, listen, we do this, we put our arms up, we hold our children on our arms, and we do this so every father that joins us can leave this meeting feeling empowered, and go into the next week, or at least maybe even just go to tomorrow, because we'll do it again tomorrow night if you come on there. And so you'll have the time to keep yourself inspired and empowered to be the kind of father that you want to be. And with that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. See y'all next week. I will see you tomorrow night at 6:30. Good night.